What's up, y'all? It's your boy Shaka Antoine, and in today's video I'm going to make a video about how to use the 8 best plugs to fish the Cape Cod Canal. In this video, basically I decided to make it because I realized early last year, I posted a video, which I'll try to link above, is about the best 8 plugs that you're gonna need to fish the Cape Cod Canal. You just shouldn't fish the canal without these plugs. And I realized that I didn't make a video about how to use those plugs. So that's what this video is going to be about today. I'm going to be displaying the techniques that I use to fish 8 plugs that you just have to have on the Cape Cod Canal. So you're going to want to stick around for all 8. Oh, but first, before we go any further, like always, I want to remind you guys to please continue to smash that like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell, make sure it's on all so that you'll get notified when I come out with the next video. I greatly appreciate it. All right, so let us get right into today's video. First, I'm going to display, or at least I'm going to mention to you what those 6 or 8 plugs are. Then I'm going to get up there and basically show you the tactics, or at least the strategy that I use to fish those plugs. Because I've seen a lot of people fish them very differently, which you somewhat can, but there are some specific ways that you should be fishing these plugs. So let us go right through the list. Number 1 is going to be the Magic Swimmer. All right, number 2 is going to be the Stick Shad. Number 3, a pencil. Number 4, SP minnow, or any of the minnow plugs, but specifically the SP minnow. Al gag, the whippet fish. Number 6 is going to be a savage gear, or a savage eel. That's what they call it. And number 7 is going to be a bucktail. Have to have a bucktail. And the 8th is going to be mega shad, which can be used on just a plain jig head, or also, as I'm going to show you, on the bucktail itself. All right, so why don't we get right into the techniques and basically how I fish all 8 of those plugs. All right, now most of them are already on the wall here, so I'll have to bring up a picture to show you. All right, starting with number 1, which is the Magic Swimmers. I prefer them in the colors here. You have there the yellow, not yellow, the white or the macro pattern. Those are the 2 that I prefer. But this plug here, there is, I like to fish it fast, and it should be fished fast with some variation. So you cast that out, preferably up current now. And you cast it up current. I like to keep the rod tip down and the rod right tucked under my shoulder. Whether if it's the left side or the right side, doesn't matter. It's just that right now I have the handle of my pen clash on the right hand side. So there's no preference there. So I like to fish it fast, This thing, the heavier one, it moves through the current very well. But in order to get that nice seductive S pattern, which you'll see, it should be fished fast. Now with variation now, is if, say you casted it up current, you're fishing it fast, you're caught up to the line. Now, when this plug gets right in front of you, 12 o'clock, right in front of you, you can either stop it or slow down the retrieve just a little bit, because from 12 o'clock all the way down to, like I say, a 45-degree angle, it's going to be in the current. This thing performs really well in the current. And what I like to do sometimes, especially if I have my polarized glasses on and I can see the fish, sometimes what I'll do is when I get to a rip or right in front of me or at that 45-degree angle, I will pause it, let it swing a little bit, because what this plug does, it actually turns around. When you stop it, it literally turns around. I'll either stop it, let it turn around, and then start a retrieve that's either fast or a little bit slower, just so that you'll see it, just so that you can continue that S seductive swimming pattern that it does. And the reason being is because often if the fish is looking at it, What does it do? It triggers a stop, a reaction strike. When it stops, you stop it for a few moments, the fish will hit it there. Or even if you don't stop it and you just slow it down, because it's still going to do a turn, but now it's facing the current, and then start the little S swimming pattern that it does. And that's when a lot of the strikes are hit if you haven't gotten one by the time you casted it up current. All right, so moving along, which is the stick shad. Now, I've seen a lot of people fish the stick shads very differently, but how I fish it is this. After I've casted it out, same, up current usually. I like to keep my tip down, same position, tip down. You can fish it with the tip up, you can, but I'll show you that second way that I sometimes fish it when the tip is up. When I have to fish the tip down, this is what I do. I do what I call a rhythmic retrieve, I do like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It just, it's not a straight. What I do is rhythmic. Now, what that does is that makes the plug swim and like dart. It makes it dart and glide. Like it'll make it go like that. And you'll feel it. If your rod tip is sensitive enough, you should be able to feel it doing like that. That's how I get a lot of my strikes with the stick shad. Now there is, sometimes I will fish it like this. I'll cast it out and I will keep the tip up. But if I'm doing that, I'm still keeping, just like arm's length down. And then you can put a straight retrieve on it, but slow, straight retrieve. And it would just, it would still have that type of swimming, but it'd be a lot more fluid. It won't be darting like with the other style of retrieve. I mean, I have seen some people do stuff like this where they be, you can do that too, but it's not a pencil. You know what I'm saying? And I've done it and I've seen it just gets kind of erratic, which might be good, but preferably, I rather the other rhythmic, the rhythmic retrieve that gets the majority of my strikes. All right, up next we have a pencil. These are the pencils that I have up here. We got 2 of the guppies out of Outcast, and this one is I believe the guy's name is Magic Man or whatever. It's like a cotton cordell, which is this is a whole nother story. I'm not even going to touch on that in this video. But the way that I pencil pop, this is how I basically learned. And pencil popping, there's not really many ways to pencil pop, but I just often see some really odd things. So, I try to keep it rhythmic as well, but not too fast and not too slow. Remember, we're fishing for stripers majority of the time, and stripers, they like plugs to be worked slowly. So I tend to do a rhythmic 1-2, like 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Not necessarily. That's not too fast and it's not too slow. Too slow is, I see people doing stuff like, I guess if the current is fast enough or whatever, that's, possible. I've seen people get some nice fish with that, but that, I don't know. I just have a problem with that. So a nice medium speed is what I'm going to say. You want to do like and you'll hear the sound. You hear the rod go. That's the speed that I typically like. And, I see some people doing some things where they're grabbing the rod all the way up here and erratically. I'm like, what are you doing? You're like, you know what I'm saying? You can put the rod between your legs, but you don't have to be, it's stripers you're looking for. So they want that nice rhythmic medium 1 2 1 2 1 2. So up next, we have here on the list, SP minnow. Now you don't have to just limit yourself to SP minnows, but SP minnows, especially in the macro pattern, they work very well on the canal, better than anywhere else I find. Which I did a video. These plugs here have a tale of two cities, man. How they work in the canal versus anywhere else is, I find, to be different. You have larger stripers will readily go after an SP minnow versus that same side striper anywhere else, I don't know, man. They're like, there's somewhat of a cap, 18-pound cap. Others have caught bigger, obviously, yes, but I find there's an 18-pound cap. So for that reason, I will sometimes, instead of going for the SP minnow, because of its size, I'll go for, I believe it's Yozuri. Yozuri, there's a few. One, the Mag Dot, I would fish that almost, and I have caught fish on that when they were on max. Or Yozuri also have something that's called a glass minnow, and I believe I have that in my bag. Yeah, okay, so this is the macro pattern glass minnow. I love its size, and this thing casts. It casts pretty well. It's very similar in profile, but it's just slightly bigger, so you know, I would imagine that bigger fish would be going after that. The one that I fish around, well, everywhere else is like a blue sardine type pattern. I like that one very much. Now, I typically like to cast that. Like, you're not really going to be casting that too far, unless they're just on nothing but minnows. You have to cast it out pretty far. Remember, typically when I'm going for an SP minnows, because the mackerel are being pushed up, they're close to shore, so you really don't have to cast this thing out pretty far. But I fish it anyway. Like, I'll do it with the arm down. You don't necessarily have to, because if they're on there, the mackerel, and they're pushing them up, you cast it out and you just get ready, because they're going to hit it pretty fast. So I would often, you know, give a nice retrieve. As long as I'm feeling the pulsations that it make, that's the right retrieve. So it's typically something in this area, and you're feeling the pulsations. Sometimes if they're not hitting right away, I'll give a little twitch, like a little, you know, just like how you would do for fishing a darter. You would just give it one little pop here and there, a couple of turns and a pop if you haven't gotten a hit. All right, up next on the list here, I have the Al Gag. That's one place you just have to be fishing the canal with. And the way that I fish the Al Gag is that'll be a jigging. So, you know, you cast it up current. Make sure it's on you. I hold my line, make sure it's on the bottom. And when I know it's on the bottom and it's in the position where I believe the fish are, then there's about two jigging methods for jigging the Al Gags. Now I typically would like to give a long jig, like a long pulling jig. Like when I know it hits the bottom, I'll go long sweep. Hits the bottom again, long sweep, long sweep. Hits the bottom again, boom, long sweep. The other method of jigging with something like the Al Gag is same. Cast it out. You know it's on the bottom. When it hits the bottom and you're ready to start jigging, you can just do small sweeps, like boom, little taps. When it hits again, boom. That will keep it closer to the bottom longer versus the long sweep. So, you know, you get the hit on the bottom, boom, boom. Just that alone. You'd be surprised at how many times you'll get strikes doing that type of jig versus the long. Moving along, the Savage Gear. Savage eels, as they're called. Very similar to the Al Gags. I mean, same exact. You could jig it that exact way, or there is another way that you can fish them. Not necessarily jigging them, but you can swim plugs Al Gags as well. But I prefer to swim the Savage if I'm not jigging it. And what I mean is this: let's say scenario is fish are on top. You see them blowing up on top, but you want to use a jig to go subsurface. You can cast it out, either wait for it to hit the bottom and then just start retrieving it until you get a strike, right? That'll be considered swimming it. Or what I've done before, and I've gotten some pretty nice 30-pound fish, is when I see that activity up top, boom, cast it out. As soon as it hits the water, wait like 1 or 2 seconds just so that it's like subsurface, just below the action on top. Because remember, fish will be on the bottom as well, and also mid-column. So I'll just start putting a nice straight retrieve on it until it gets back to me, or until one of them cows come finding it. Boom! That has worked for me really well. But again, I prefer to swim the Savage. A lot had to do with the profile. Normally I'm fishing it in the macro pattern. And if you see macro, especially when it's like tinker mac around, not really the horse macro size, but the tinker macs, when they're running away, or if you see them out there getting pushed up, that really looks like a tinker mackerel trying to escape very well. So I'll swim the Savage, but I'll jig it as well. But just for mentioning the different techniques, that's what I would do with the Savage as well. Right, so moving along, up next is gonna be a bucktail, good old bucktail. Remember, everything hits a bucktail, which is why I always keep a bucktail in the bag no matter where I am. Of course, the ounces will depend upon where I am. So just for canal purposes, you know, I like to fish bucktails within the 3 to 5 ounce range. And I always fish it with a fat cow jig strip. If not a fat cow jig strip, which I'll get into the second variation later. But I fish them basically the same way that I fish the gags, man. You know, you cast them down, and I will jig it, let it bounce. Sometimes I'll put absolutely no retrieve on it at all, especially if I'm trying to cover, you know, a wide range of area, or if I know that there's a drop coming up, I will not retrieve it. I'll just jig until I know I'm in that area. Once I know I'm in the area of the drop, I'm dumping line to get down. And then, yeah, if I don't get a hit, I'll just straight retrieve it back. But yeah, the bucktail has been very effective for me on the canal. That's why it's just one of the plugs that I just will not fish the canal without. Now, the next plug that we're going to talk about here is the Mega Shad. Very deadly weapon on the Cape Cod Canal. There is some variation as to how I will present it, which is here on the jig head. Very effective way. Yeah, I like to typically, if I'm pulling out the Mega Shad, this one is by Zinger Baits. Really like those. Or if you can find the older ones, but they're hard to find now. Or any of the rat tail ones will do. But I basically, you know, I only really will pull that out if the fish are finicky. It's at night, and I know that fish are there because we've been catching them previously, but for whatever reason, I see that it's starting to slow down a little bit. Sometimes a nice little small change to something like a Mega Shad or rat tail would be just the right thing needed to continue to catch when everyone else is still throwing what they were throwing before. So I will throw that out there. And once it hits the bottom, same way, just jig it. I usually do my long sweeps. Oftentimes, I won't retrieve it. I'll just be there jigging in place. Jigging that thing in place and make sure that they see it. And when they find it, boom, right? Or even with that now, sometimes I'll keep on jigging it back to me. Like I'll jig. Oftentimes, I've gotten hits that way as well. I pretty much, after I decided that, okay, they're not hitting there, where I end up down current, I'll just jig it and retrieve it back to me until I get a strike. Often I'll get one when it gets right in front of me. All right, so the next item here is a combination of the last two. And what that is often I will put a Mega Shad on a bucktail. In fact, this time I have one here to show you. That's this puppy right here. Now this combination here can probably look a little weird, but I have learned in a certain spots on the canal where this thing is deadly. And it's, again, that scenario is when I noticed either things are slowing down, or sometimes I'll go for this first because I know where it works. Things are slowing down, fish are getting picky, and I know that this combination right here is normally still a very deadly thing. But you know, I fish it the same exact way. In fact, that setup is a little bit more heavier. The ounces of the Mega Shad and the bucktail combination is usually a little bit heavier. So you can imagine I'll either be getting that out further, or I would be very conscious of where I'm placing it because it's more prone to snagging. But you know, it's very good at getting fish. And that is the same exact way that I jig any of the others. Which, you know, the variation that you can use, speaking of the others, are the fish lab and, you know, the canal baits. You can fish them exactly the same way. I really have them here just for display, but just to also any type of paddle tail can be jigged the same exact ways that you would fish the algag or the savage. That is the ways that I fish the 8 plugs that you must have in order to be fishing on the Cape Cod Canal. Well, all right, but that's going to wrap up this video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please continue to stay tuned to the channel. If you would like me to make any sort of videos, please leave that in the comments below. If you'd like to make any comments or any videos I have made on my channel or something that I mentioned within this video, please feel free to leave that in the comments below. All right, so please continue to have a blessed day and peace out.